And you should be able to feel these. When you get back here, you'll feel the rear delts when you do them this way. Hey man, Gary Walker here, and welcome back for another video. In this video, I'm gonna give you the only 3 exercises men over 40 need to build bigger shoulders. So with that said, the first one we're gonna do is what's called a compound movement. The compound movement, anytime you're trying to build muscle, you wanna use that compound exercise, meaning a multi-joint exercise. You wanna use that to progress with. For instance, 8 to 12 reps is gonna be a great rep range to build more muscle or hypertrophy. Now, the key to finding the right weight is make sure you choose a weight that's gonna allow you to fail within the 8 to 12 reps. Then when that 12 rep range becomes way too light, for instance, if you're doing 20-pound dumbbells and you can barely do 3 sets of 20, that's perfect to start with. But then when you start getting to where you can do 3 sets of 22, then 23, 24, you're better off at that point adding 5 more pounds to the lift, which is gonna drop you back down a little bit into the lower rep range. And that's how you're gonna continue to make progress. With that said, let me show you a shoulder press that we're gonna use. I like to do seated dumbbell shoulder presses for my shoulders. It's just a great all around exercise. And when you're working with dumbbells, it allows you to work with your own proper anatomical positioning, meaning whatever type of mobility you have in your shoulders or lack of mobility or even stability, this will help improve that. So the key to doing these correctly is make sure your elbows are slightly pointed in the front. They're not all the way flared out to the side. You'll see here my elbows are flared out to my sides and my palms are facing completely away from me. That puts a lot of stress on the shoulder joint itself. I would rather you bring those shoulders in, and you'll see what that did with my wrist. Now my hands are no longer facing the front, they're slightly supinated in this position. Now, when you're doing your shoulders, you wanna control the descent or the eccentric phase. It's okay to lift explosively, but control the weight on the way down. 1001, 1002, 1003, nice full range, right back up. 1001, 1002, 1003, right back up. So it's okay to use an explosive contraction going up as long as you're controlling it on the way down. And you'll notice I'm using a full range of motion. The reason I say that is because I've got mobile shoulders. If your shoulders are real tight and this hurts you down here, go ahead and get about this 90-degree angle, drive back to the top. But I want you to gradually get to where you can go from here slightly lower and up, eventually coming all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up. Because what that does, it puts you in a deeper stretch in your shoulder joint. So it's gonna allow for a greater range of motion. Not only is that gonna lead to more shoulder growth, but it's gonna help with shoulder health. You're gonna get a lot more flexible around the ligaments and the tendons and all the little musculature in the shoulder joint itself. So that's why I like doing full range of motion stuff. But this is exercise number 1. Again, this is called a compound movement. And quickly to explain why, when I said multi-joint, this exercise, you're bending at the elbow, which is 1 joint, and the shoulder, 2 joints. So it's multi-joints working with this movement. So anytime you're using a compound exercise, you're gonna get your bigger bang for your buck when it comes to the results. So you wanna make sure you are doing at least 1 compound movement with all of your muscle groups when you're working out. The second exercise we're gonna go with is one of my all-time favorites. It's a dumbbell lateral raise. The reason I like this one because it works the lateral heads or the side delts. The reason that is important specifically for all men, but especially men over 40, the wider your shoulders look, the more narrow your waist looks. And a lot of older guys tend to accumulate a lot of body fat around that midsection. When you do that, one of the quickest ways to take focus off of that is to add width to your shoulders. That said, let me make sure you do these correctly. I'll show you what to do when you're doing the lateral raises. Couple mistakes people make is keeping their elbows straight, doing that, If your elbows are straight, that's gonna put way too much strain on your elbow joint itself. Another mistake is you see people going too high. They'll go all the way up, almost to their ear level, all the way up here. That's way too high. The other thing that they do that you don't want to do is use momentum. They'll bend and throw the weight up, just like this. Throw it up. You want to make sure, like all the other exercises, you control it. Control, especially the descent. If you're throwing things using momentum, not only are you not really getting enough activation in the muscle you're trying to work, but you're setting yourself up for an injury. So basically all you want to make sure that you're doing, bend slightly at the elbow, lift right out here. So let me show you one key thing. Your mind should be focused on pushing something out away as opposed to lifting your hand up. Imagine standing in between two walls and you're trying to push the walls away, just like this, trying to push them away. You want to do that. You're not trying to push the wall away and then throw it up. If you're thinking about going out with the weight, that's going to put the stress on the medial delt, which is what you want to do. So here, straight out. 1, 2. See that cadence as well? Control it on the way down. Couple more. And this is one of the key exercises you need to make sure you're doing for a full rounded workout. Reason I say that, you'll hear people talk about only doing compound movements. This is an isolation movement. So if you notice, the only joint that's working is the shoulder joint. You're not using your elbow to move the weight. It's only this. So a single joint, so it's an isolation exercise. The thing about those, you don't need a lot of weight. You want to control the weight that you're using and keep tension on the working muscle. You don't want to go too heavy with an isolation exercise, only the compound exercises. Now, with that said, the reason I was saying this helps with a well-rounded routine is because a lot of exercises have synergistic muscles. You have secondary muscles that get worked. For instance, the shoulder press, you work a lot of the front delts. On the way down, you're also working some of the posterior delts, so the rear delts. But you're not working the lateral heads, the medial heads that we just did. So you want to make sure you're incorporating some type of lateral raise, whether it be the ones I just showed you or even with a cable. All right, so speaking of cables, that's going to lead us to our third exercise for shoulders. You heard me talk about the shoulder joint, the whole shoulder complex being worked with the pressing. We just did the lateral. Now I want to isolate the rear. So a lot of different rear delt exercises, and some people don't work rear delts enough because they do get worked slightly when you're doing back rows and stuff on your back day. However, I like a full developed shoulder. As men, you want to make sure you're working all of your muscles so you don't have any muscular imbalances, because those imbalances can lead to a lot of different injuries and tightness in all your shoulder joints. So one of the exercises I like to do pretty much every time I work shoulders is what's called a face pull. Now, there's several versions of face pulls. A lot of people talk about face pulls for rehabbing their shoulder joints. It does help with the rotator cuff muscles and all of those things inside the shoulder capsule. I like to use it more for the focus on the posterior delts. The difference is you're bringing your elbows out and you're also trying to pull the handles apart. That's gonna activate your posterior delts. Then we're gonna squeeze on the way back. Almost squeeze your traps together at the top. That's gonna allow you to get a lot of work in the posterior delt. You're still gonna be working those rotator cuff muscles as well, but I really like this if you're doing it correctly. I use an overhand grip approach. You'll see people doing underhand and coming out. This is probably more of a traditional face pull because it allows for that external rotation. And I'm trying to do more of the posterior delt work. So I come with an overhand grip, separate these and pull these apart while I'm coming back. Right there, I can feel my rear delts. Control all the way back. And you should be able to feel these. When you get back here, you'll feel the rear delts when you do them this way. So just squeeze it. And again, no need to go extremely heavy here. I like to do about 12 to 15 reps. So when I say not extremely heavy, you want to make sure the 12 to 15 reps is fairly challenging. If it's not, add a little bit more weight. But you don't want to go into the 6 to 10 rep range. You want to go a little bit lighter than that. But this is the third shoulder exercise. If you do all 3 of those consistently, and if you're trying to grow shoulders, work them a couple times a week, man. That's the best way to bring up a weak body part or to grow a body part you're trying to emphasize, is to add more frequency training. But do these 3 exercises and you're gonna get great results. With that said, man, thank you so much for watching this video. And as always, get busy, get after it, and God bless.